All right, so today we're going to do something a little different. We're taking this ancient, incredibly deep Buddhist text and looking at it through a totally new lens. Forget scripture you just worship. Think of it as a practical operating system for your life, right now. Okay, let's jump in. So the Compassionate Lotus Sutra has some lines that are, well, they're pretty shocking. You read something like this, offering one's own flesh, blood, and marrow to all beings, and your first reaction is probably, whoa. It sounds extreme, it's unsettling, maybe even a little horrifying, right? And that forces you to ask a really fundamental question. Is this whole thing just a guide to extreme self-torture? Or is there something else going on? Something bigger? A master plan hidden under the surface of all these jarring images? Well, today, we're going to unpack that exact plan. To get there, we have to start with a radical reframe of the entire text. It turns out that the way most people read this stuff might be missing the point completely. You see, the common view zooms in on these acts as just extreme self-sacrifice and suffering. But the real core of the sutra, it's proposing something way more sophisticated. Think of it as a grand system design for waking up every single being. And this is absolutely crucial. The goal was never self-sacrifice just for the sake of it. The Buddha in this whole story is acting more like a super system architect. He's designing an awakening system, and every one of those extreme acts, it's a strategic move. It's like a piece of code written to get the entire system, that's all of us, back on the right track. So, if the Buddha is the architect, then what are the tools? Well, the sutra actually lays out a specific toolkit, a whole set of strategies for putting this awakening system into action. The sutra gives us 3 core operating models for how this system works. First up, you've got the provider. This is the part that gives resources to meet basic needs. I mean, let's be real, you can't reach enlightenment if you're starving. Second is the challenger, who uses those shocking extreme acts we talked about to completely shatter our attachments to our own bodies and identities. And third, there's the corrector. This is the one that applies pressure, maybe even a little fear, to force a course correction when, gentle wisdom just isn't cutting it. And this brings us to a huge shift in how we understand this stuff. A bodhisattva isn't just a static, peaceful statue. It's a set of dynamic, adaptive strategies. You could almost say it's a verb, not a noun. It's about being flexible, about solving the problem of suffering, using whatever tool the situation calls for. But the plan gets even bigger. Seriously, we're just getting started. It moves way beyond helping one person at a time to building something with exponential reach. It's all about building a network. This one quote from the sutras is the key to the whole thing. The Buddha says, "The countless Buddhas in all directions are those I inspired to seek enlightenment in my past lives." Just let that sink in for a second. The scale of what he's saying there is absolutely mind-blowing. And this is where you see the difference between a linear path and an exponential one. An individual's path is usually focused on my own awakening. But the Buddhist path, it's about creating countless creators of awakening. It's not just about reaching the finish line yourself, it's about making enlightenment go viral. So if we translate this into modern tech terms, the Buddha is basically building an awakening network. He's designing an awakening propagation mechanism. And he's mass-producing awakening nodes, which are just people who can then go on and awaken others. He's not just a user in the system, he's the programmer of the entire social network. Okay, so we've covered the strategy, we've covered the network. Now we get to the deepest, most profound concept in the entire text. This is what you might call reality's ultimate secret. And I'm not kidding when I say this next part gets a little sci-fi, so you might want to buckle up. So the sutra describes this wild scene where countless beings literally enter the Buddha's body. And inside just a single one of his pores, they can see entire worlds and hear all the teachings. I know, it sounds like pure fantasy, a crazy metaphor, but what if it's describing something very, very real? This leads us to the ultimate punchline, the simulation metaphor. The sutra isn't saying you're literally inside a skin pore. It's saying you are not in the world. The world and everything you experience is happening in your awareness. Reality isn't some external thing you exist within. It's a projection happening inside of consciousness itself. So after that pretty mind-bending trip into the nature of reality, how in the world can we apply this? Well, the sutra's principles can actually be distilled into a super practical, actionable framework for today. Let's look at what a modern path to awakening looks like. Okay, so here's a 5-stage path. It all starts with an awareness upgrade, which is where you learn to just see your emotions instead of letting them run the show. Next is a huge one, a value reversal. You actually shift your whole mindset from taking from the world to giving to it. Then you start to adopt systems thinking, so you move from just helping one person to influencing entire systems. After that, we live what's called a vow-driven life, where you act from a big, long-term vision, not just short-term wants. And finally, you get to egoless operation, where you can act without being attached to the outcome or who you think you are. Ultimately, after we explore all of this, the systems, the network, the crazy nature of reality, it all comes down to a personal choice. Your choice. You know, if you had to boil down the entire philosophy of this sutra into just one single sentence, this would be it. Use endless compassion and infinite vows in a dreamlike world to build an awakening network. That's it. That's the mission statement. And to find your own place on this path, you can start by asking yourself 3 really simple but powerful questions. First, in my daily life, am I mainly an asker or a giver? Second, is my main focus on fixing myself? Or am I trying to influence others for the better? And third, do I have a long-term vow, a guiding mission that's bigger than just me? Because here is the most important takeaway of all of this. This sutra, it's not a monument. It's not just a story telling you how great the Buddha was. It's a user manual. It's laying out a blueprint and telling you, directly to you, that this exact path is available for you to walk right now. The architecture has been designed. The network is just waiting to be built. The only real question left is the one it asks of you. Will you begin?